What are the best techniques that you can use to outwit a master manipulator? In this video, I talk about 8 manipulation tactics used by the narcissist or the emotional abuser. I'm going to share with you some tools to outwit them. Welcome to the Divorce Sanctuary. I'm Elizabeth, author of Finding Lily and the A to Z of Emotional Abuse. On this channel, I talk about healing from emotional abuse and divorcing emotionally from the abuser. I want to remind you that love should be unconditional, and divorcing emotionally and healing the original wound is life-changing. I want to help you understand and process what's happening inside you and help you discover the best tools to heal on a deeper level, becoming the best version of yourself. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're returning, welcome back. If you have any tips that you think would be helpful to others, please add them in the comments below. This is not a diagnostic tool, and I'm not going to be saying that this video is for entertainment purposes only, because nothing about this behavior is entertaining. If you believe that you've been manipulated, please reach out to a professional that can help you break away from the toxic relationship and help you set and keep some really strong boundaries. Manipulation can be so subtle. You may end up questioning your perception of reality, overriding the other person's behaviour. It can be extremely painful to be discarded by an emotional abuser and trying to make sense of what happened. You may see other people's stories and think, I could have written that, or wonder if they have a handbook that they all use. Manipulative people often use common manipulation tactics and behaviours to get what they want. And during the video, I'm going to share with you a real story. I'm going to change the names and a few details. I will also show you what to look for to spot manipulation tactics and share a variety of techniques with you. So there should be something that works for everyone. Manipulation is coercive control, and I will link some of my videos on that subject in the description box below. It's used to control your actions and your thoughts and ultimately your life. When you are aware of the signs, you can learn what works for you to protect yourself from this type of abuse. It might not happen overnight, so if you find yourself thinking, I can't believe it's happened to me again, praise yourself in the fact that you're actually now spotting the abuse. When you start to flex these muscles, you get better at spotting the behaviour or listening to your body when it says something doesn't feel right. If someone gave you a pair of trainers today, you wouldn't be expected to run a marathon without doing any training. Some of the types of manipulation used are the cycle of abuse, which is idealization, devaluation, and discard. 3 tools that are designed to confuse you and to trauma bond you, to hand over control. You experience highs of being placed on a pedestal, being worshipped. You then receive the slight put downs, and you're initially told, if you question it, that you're too sensitive or that they were only joking. And you're given a helping hand back up, only to be shoved a few times until you land on the floor during the discard. And then they pick you back up. Dizzy from the games, they strip you of everything. You turn off your intuition and you're isolated from friends and family, as they may influence you or try to point out the abuser's behaviour as lying. And this can be also half-truths or withholding information, avoiding blame or consequences for their reaction. It wasn't them, they weren't there. Projection, where a person with manipulative tendencies might cause tension or drama, putting the blame on someone else. They're always the victim. Did you hear the story about their crazy exes? Of course, you heard about their awful childhood. You might have found yourself walking on eggshells. They behave in such a selfish way with a sense of importance, an insatiable need for admiration. They lack empathy, feeling entitled to special treatment, easily offended, and they always hold grudges. They behave like children in an adult's body, unable to take responsibility for their actions, and anyone who disagrees with them or their unreasonable expectations might be subjected to their rage. They also use flattery, so it can be hard to tell the difference between a compliment and flattery. So a compliment is given to sincerely point out something positive with no expectation of gain, whereas flattery is used disingenuously to gain emotional leverage. With flattery, there's often an expectation of getting something in return. Alice was receiving attention from someone that she'd met through friends. She was the youngest daughter, and her eldest brother was the golden child who could do no wrong in either of their parents' eyes. Alice was an amazing artist and musician. Henry was a mediocre student, but according to their parents, he was a demigod. And most sentences ended with, "Isn't that right, Henry?" Alice felt seen and heard with this man in a way that she'd never been seen before. He was attentive. He asked about her life, her likes, her dislikes. He started to take her out to places and to experience things she never had before. The relationship started to get serious very quickly, and Alice found she didn't have enough time for her friends. She was cancelling evenings out as she was off to the theatre or to a concert. She became distant with her friends and was slow to respond to them, and eventually they stopped trying to invite her out with them. Alice had a lovely home and Dave would visit often. It was so much nicer than his house share. And after a year, they decided to move their relationship forward a bit further, and Dave would move in with Alice. It was agreed that he would pay half the rent and half the bills. Within a few days of moving in, Dave approached Alice very concerned. He just discovered that he hadn't been paying the rent on his old property. He told her a story about a change of bank accounts and how he now owed 6 months back rent. Alice did find it a bit odd as it's a large amount of money and she would have noticed the extra income, but she agreed that he could live rent-free to clear that debt. When that debt was cleared, he paid the first month's rent. And then next month he had an issue with his laptop and asked if she could cover the rent. Alice agreed, thinking that they'd agreed that the following month he'd pay her back. But the following month he said that hadn't been the agreement. He thought she was going to just help him out. Their relationship ended after a few years, but this pattern of financial control had continued during that time. And when she went through her accounts, she found he owed her nearly £10,000. And then she saw the other manipulation that went on in the relationship, how he'd isolated her from friends, how he'd created jealousy by using triangulation with a female work colleague. His put downs turned into nasty comments and accusations. She'd found he'd had multiple affairs throughout their relationship. And when she tried to talk about his behaviour, he'd accused her of wanting him to have an affair. When he left, he went to stay with a female friend, telling all their friends that she was unbearable to live with and her trust issues had driven them apart. Alice spent months trying to understand what had happened and where she went wrong. But as she started to process the relationship, she told me she'd lost years of her life after the relationship was over, believing this was all her fault, believing she did have trust issues. And it's not uncommon when you're coming out of these relationships to question whether anything about the relationship was real as you're going through that processing period. And this is a really important statement that you can park away for a period of time while you do process the relationship, because it can be used later on as a healing tool. The abuser uses the cycle of abuse to carry out their manipulation. They idolised you. They told you how amazing you were, what they loved about you, and they validated you in a way that you may never have been seen or heard before. Then they started to confuse you with the subtle put downs, and those amazing qualities were things that they then later on criticised you for. You might have said something and they told you that you were too sensitive or that they were only kidding. And they took you around the cycle, discarding you from time to bond you. And each time you reached the dizzy heights of that pedestal, they kicked you off, draining you of everything. They triangulated you with everyone, real people and fictional, to create emotions that you may never have thought you were capable of experiencing. Isolating you from your support network, smearing your friends' characters and your family's characters, so you would isolate yourself, and placing the abuser themselves in the role of caregiver, so you actually find yourself turning to the abuser for help and support. I will also link my video titled "Have You Been Dancing with the Devil" in the description box below. These relationships destroy you on every single level: emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. You were unwittingly living in a war zone, and you might now be feeling deeply lonely, or you've lost the ability to trust yourself to do anything. The unmet needs of the child meant that the abuser was unable to master critical emotional development. There are 7 levels of anger. but their rage goes from 0 to 7 in an instant. If they perceive any threat to their fragile sense of self, anything they perceive as a threat to their full self is considered an injury. And then this injury is taken as serious criticism, total rejection, or a threat to their very existence. Their response is swift, intense, and it's out of proportion. There are two types of rage: explosive or passive aggressive. The explosive rages are aggressive outbursts, which can be verbal or physical. But with the passive aggressive rages, they withdraw into a sulky, silent treatment as a means of punishment. So if you're still like Alice and still processing and wondering whether it was an abusive or manipulative relationship, ask yourself, did I ignore my gut feeling? Perhaps you had the need to run away. You could ask yourself, did I take responsibility for everything, even when I knew it wasn't my fault? Did I feel guilty for wanting something, even if it was a small amount of time or a small amount of money? Did I lose myself in this relationship? It might be that you couldn't fully express who you were, or you may have acted differently when you were around the abuser. Did you find yourself walking on eggshells? You begin to question your memory. Manipulation causes stress and anxiety, but it doesn't stop there. It can make you feel confused and insecure. And you may even be accused by the abuser of having a mental health issue. A common one is bipolar. So what will be the best techniques to outwit the master manipulator for you? Please do remember, though, not to use the techniques that the abuser has used against you on them. You will get hurt. Instead, these are the things that you can do. Heal yourself. During the relationship, you experienced abuse that only now you will start to discover and understand how deep this runs. People who've never experienced this type of abuse will never understand what you've been through. It's a very particular type of hurt, and it penetrates every single layer of your being. This pain emanates from deep inside your soul. The pain courses through your veins. It leaves you with that feeling that your heart has been frozen and your trust in any human being has been destroyed. Do not engage with the abuser if you can. Disappear like a wounded animal. Run away and lick your wounds. Do not put a time limit on your healing. Allow yourself time to understand what happened. Put a limit on that. Otherwise, you may go down a rabbit hole that you might never come out of, which means that not only are you hurt, but you're also lost. Once you take the step to heal, also commit to look further than this relationship and understand why part of you allowed this to happen. I promise this does work and it does get better, but it is a process. And the biggest bonus to healing yourself is that this isn't what the abuser wants. They want you to stay broken and powerless. They want you to be on tap so that they can hear how broken you are. And if they complain that they don't want to hear from you, it's either because they're fearful of what you will expose to their new supply, or they're using your brokenness to either triangulate or to play victim with their entourage. And this is where they get a double helping of supply. Another way you can outsmart them is not react. Everything they do is to get a reaction from you. So techniques like no contact will help you hugely. Do you remember the peace you experienced when the relationship first ended? So going no contact will bring you that peace again. What might not be clear at the moment is how much their actions and the games they play will ultimately help you heal. And if you can't go no contact, use the grey rock method. Any communication you receive, step back, don't react. If you can ask someone to read your emails, letters, text messages, or any form of communication, please do that. Put the device that the messages come in a cupboard or in a drawer or under the bed and walk away and breathe and ground. When you're in a state of hyper alert, it's so easy to see things that aren't there or be drawn into situations through fear. Fear is a huge emotion, and so many other emotions stem from it. This fear may come from the relationship or not understanding how you'll cope or live without them. They had put themselves in a place of power and control, and they possibly told you how lucky you were to have them in your life. And when they write that message, they know exactly what they're doing. and they know exactly how you're going to react, and that is what they want. Another way of outsmarting them is to find a statement that works for you. So if you're constantly being asked to do things, provide things, go somewhere, change diaries, find a statement. So it might be that I need to check my diary. I need to check my diary. There's something about that day that's just ringing a bell. I just can't quite think what it is. Find and practice one statement that slips off your tongue with ease. You might find yourself in a situation where you're being manipulated into handing over your power. Give yourself the time to step away and think. And this is crucial while you're healing. Your instincts might instantly be to comply with the request that doesn't benefit you. And I love this one because you can literally extinguish the emotions and dig deep into where they're coming from. The abuser is looking for a reaction. They may try to attack you personally. They may have used techniques like triangulation to compare you to other people, creating jealousy. So use the technique stop, drop, roll. And if you were doing some form of fire training, you would have been taught this. You're told to stop where you are, to drop on the floor and roll either in something, or you roll around on the floor until you smother all the flames. But you can use this to protect yourself. You stop if you receive a message or some form of communication. You do not press the reply button. You close the message. You tell yourself you will respond later. You drop into that emotion, feel where it's coming from in your body. Rather than smothering the emotions, acknowledge them and where they're coming from. And this will help with your recovery. The next one is called Mind the Gap. They blame shift. It wasn't them. Emotionally abusive people have fragile egos and are very insecure. They use other people to fill a hole. They're like vampires sucking the life force out of other people and topping up on all their missing parts. They don't know who they really are, so they wear a mask pretending to be someone else, pretending to be the person they believed that you were looking for. They blame shift. It wasn't them. And they project their incomplete or missing parts onto you, saying that you have the problem. And in that moment, stop and ask. A really simple statement. Is it true? You may hold a belief about yourself. Stop and listen to that voice. Listen to the way the sentence is constructed. Are these your words? Lean in a little further. Whose words are they? And you may hear the voice of the person that said them. Then challenge them. Is this true? Is it true what you're being labelled? And what runs hand in hand with this is going back to something I mentioned earlier about questioning the relationship and wondering whether it was one lie. And I said, hold that thought, put this in your back pocket for later. As you work through and process what's happened in this relationship, you can use this technique. I found this hugely helpful and I share it with a lot of people because it seems to break like a spell and a connection. You've questioned whether your relationship was a lie. And once you've processed that and you've worked your way through that, you can then ask yourself, if everything that came out of their mouth was a lie, why am I believing this statement about myself? It's so powerful and life-changing. Refuse to play. This is a game, and the bigger and the higher and the deeper your boundaries were, this increased the challenge for them. So build up your muscles. What boundary will you set? Can you stick to it? Do they want to change visitation for the children? Perhaps they want to delay payment of money. Become a broken record. I used to teach this when I was the complaints trainer. You state your intention and you repeat it like a broken record player. So the needle's stuck in the groove. You can change the statement. So it could be that weekend doesn't work for me. I can't change the schedule. The change of a weekend doesn't work. The schedule for that weekend can't be changed. And you repeat the statement in as many different ways as you need to. You're just saying the same thing, constructing the sentence in a different way. They will challenge you just to see how far or where your breaking point is. Just become a broken record. The manipulative tactics of the abuser are designed to drag their victims back into the relationship. Maybe they believe they will change this time, and all they have to do is not upset the abuser or point out their bad behaviour. It does get better, I promise. This is a bit of muscle building. And as I said at the beginning of the video, don't beat yourself up if you make mistakes. because you're starting to recognize, and that's something that you might not have done at the beginning of the relationship. So learn to ground and breathe, and they're going to be your best friends. Grounding, breathing, and honest conversations. Remind yourself of the relationship and the abuse that took place. And this is why it's really helpful to write out your story. It not only helps you process the abuse, but it also helps you when you fall into that hole of rumination. If you found the video helpful in some way, please like and share if you can, and consider subscribing to the channel. I'll link my course, It Stops Here, It Stops Now, in the description box below, and sending you loads and loads of love.